Hi, welcome to Flow Goodness Podcast. Come
and get
some goodness. So today we are discussing on a very sensitive topic. So it's a trigger warning. It could be triggering for some. So if you are dealing with this particular topic, suggest that you take precautions that you need to. So today the topic is how to handle loneliness. As you know, loneliness is a global epidemic in itself, and it's a pretty sensitive topic even for us personally.
Yeah.
Right? But so we're going to try and handle it the best way we can and come up with some suggestions, some stories, some narratives which would help you and help us in the process as well. So, what is loneliness? So, loneliness branches out in two areas: physical loneliness and emotional loneliness. Now, emotional loneliness is the overpowering element here, which actually comes into every area of your life. And we're going to dwell on that. But prior to that, Daniela did come up with an important point about solitude and loneliness. So, can you talk a little bit about solitude and loneliness?
Yeah. So I've heard people using loneliness and solitude as synonyms.
Okay.
Interchangeably. They keep using it,
Okay.
but we tend to not differentiate those words. So loneliness, we can say that it's kind of an isolation.
Yeah.
Solitude is also an isolation, but the main difference is that the kind of mindset you hold during those phases.
Okay.
Loneliness is something you don't choose, but it's been imposed on you by the other people or your surroundings.
Okay.
And that's a negative impact on your mental health as well.
Okay.
So, and on other side, solitude is something that we voluntarily prefer. Solitude is going alone, sitting in your room, introspecting, spending time on your self-growth.
So that has a positive connotation.
Yeah, that has a positive connotation.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's very important to notice that. So, in order to give an example, just to support that discussion, is that when you're sitting down meditating, that's solitude.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas when you're, your friends have ditched you, or you don't have friends, sorry to hear that, and you just binge watching Netflix just to cover up Saturday night.
The empty spaces.
Yeah, the empty spaces. Yeah. So that's a differentiating factor. Okay, so solitude has actually worked miracles in people's lives. If you take any of the great artists, if you take any people who have come up with great piece of work in their life, they have been forced into solitude due to various either ill health or family situations, and all they could do was pour over books, pour over work and focus on themselves. So that actually takes us to a very important point: outer focus and inner focus. The entire world is out of focus. Out of focus in the sense, even when a baby is born, like, oh, will you grow up and be a doctor? Will you be an engineer? We've already started labeling and putting them, rather directing them into becoming something for the world, like the outer world, right? You got to have a home, you got to have a car, you got to have a beautiful wife, you got to have children, you got to have all these societal norms. Everything is built around outer world. And of course, Instagram, social media, Facebook, the posts, and all the fakeness that's connected with it. Though there are bright spots in it, but the fakeness sort of is overpowering, right? The other thing is the internal focus. When you look within, so if you want to tap within, so one is to shut down those senses, if you close your eyes, which is one of your main things, you go black and then you start looking in, right? You start actually listening to your breathing. You can you can hear your heartbeat, you can hear, you can feel your physical self, right? Which is you, and then start internalizing and processing it, right? So I don't think there's much importance given to that because the rat race is, like, yeah, so intense. It's like clockwork, and you wake up in the morning, you do your stuff, you work out, you head to office, you do your work, and then you get back, and then you gotta attend to family and kids and etc. And then you do the work again. Essentially, the entire time to introspect is if something goes wrong, like if you have a nervous breakdown, if you meet with an accident, if you break a hand or your leg and you're off the job, or if you're laid off, or something else happens, if there's a death in the family, or there's an incident, or even if there is a celebration, then you're like sort of shifting focus from that routine. And there is some time, during that travel, during that, various phases of those empty spaces which you mentioned, that there is time to introspect. And I know during the day you do get time, but in the broader scheme of things, internal focus is not given so much of importance. Internal focus is misunderstood as, you got to be toned, you got to have your six pack or your eight pack, you got to have, so it's again, it's about physical outer look, looking good, grooming, like even self-care is molded in a wrong way, right? So you're actually buying that sort of problem, into your scheme of things. So that's where, the heavy advertising. I think advertisements are centered around inadequacy, right? So a brown guy like me, you try and sell, no, I went to, I went to get my hair done, and the guy's like, why don't you start using this cream? You'd become fairer. I'm like, dude, like, come on. You understand what I mean? Which is close to home, so I don't want to name the brand, but then, yeah. So, so that's already sold to you, right? So if you're fairer, you'd be more handsome. If you're, fairer, you'd be more prettier. Or, if you're groomed in a particular way or wear a particular brand, so then you start, so again, the entire thing is out of focus, right? Like nobody's going to come and have a conversation with you about, how being calm helps you, how being focused helps you. So that takes us to that, while acknowledging some of the statistics, some of the numbers are alarming, they're concerning. So around 13 million, homes, 13 million single mothers are leading, their families, right? In India. These numbers are, okay. Around 81% of the people who are in the dating scene, who are, polled in the dating app, one of the dating apps, they've said that they prefer to be single. So 81%, that's an alarming number, right? Because they don't like the patriarchy, they don't like the structure, they don't anticipate that, things are going to be good going forward, then they're not going to find, the right partner. And there's all this, news coming at you from various points about, abuse and destruction and, etc., a whole lot of stuff, right? The way by the time you process all these pieces of information, you usually wind up being negative, right? As an overall perspective. So one, critical area to focus on is that what are you doing? Are you completely external focused, or are you internal focused? That do you want to understand yourself? Do you want personal growth? Do you want to understand how to handle? Or are you looking for, oh, come and rescue me, I'm a damsel in distress, or, I'm a knight without my shining armor, I'm gonna need my battalion to come and rescue me, I need my squad, that takes me to one important conversation as well, in the sense that in social media you find that, hey, check my squad,
the boys.
yeah, boys and girls, like both, I've seen both, my girl gang and etc. So when you flash that, if I'm going through a lonely phase, I'm scrolling through, then I notice you having so much of fun, heading out, probably, I love the beaches, probably heading out to Goa with your friends, having great time, and, and loading up social media. Nothing wrong with that, but that's actually depressing for me, and it's pretty triggering for me, So It's like, where are my friends? They're back, in the Middle East. So there's a distance. And these guys are like spread all across, and everybody's got responsibilities, they've got families and stuff. So when am I going to connect with them? Like I did. One of my friends with the kids, when they came down to Goa, we did fly down from here. We did go and spend some time with them and get back. It was like amazing. Though it was a short break, but you don't get to do that often, right? In the sense, then when you watch this on social media, that kind of depresses the hell out of you. The brands, the cars, the fun, especially the fun, the get-togethers, and the whole dining out, the party scene. So I think the first thing to understand is whether you're internal focus or external focus. The numbers are alarming. There are 13 million, as I mentioned earlier, and there are 81% of people who want to be single. There was another study in which which spoke to residents in Mumbai, in various areas in Mumbai. They spoke about how the head of the family feels lonely, feels isolated, feels, So another thing is also responsibility. So if you have to understand the various factors, so one is probably the phase that you're in, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in that 7 and below, then I don't think this is a concern for you. If you're between 8 and 14, in that teen years, etc., trying to establish. I think, even when I speak to my own children, the worst thing is, so-and-so doesn't want to play with me. And my best friend doesn't want to play with me. My best friend doesn't want to talk to me. I think that's heartbreaking, right? So everybody wants their life to be recognized, to be witnessed, to be participated in. There is an important element here, one important neurotransmitter element here, the reasoning, oxytocin, okay, which actually usually it is, connected between mother and child, it comes up, at the time of giving birth, breastfeeding, so release of neurotransmitter.
It's also
But
known as also known as the love hormone.
Absolutely, it's a love hormone. So it also comes up, when couples are intimate. It also comes up, while consuming food. So it's not just, so it also, oxytocin is also connected to physical touch, even, mild touching, stroking, hand holding. All these are connected. So there is an element you can't essentially. One heartbreaking picture that stayed in my mind is, during COVID, at the peak of COVID, there were these nurses. I don't know whether it was Brazil or I don't know which part of the world it was. They were filling up, the gloves, the surgical medical gloves, with hot water, putting a knot on it, and placing it on the patient's hands so that they can have a hand to hold. You understand? So when you're actually dying, and on top of that, you're isolated, loneliness, right? Or you have higher scope of death. It's a pandemic, and it's like you hear news all around, and you're isolated, and when your respiratory system shuts down, it's actually disastrous. So I had COVID twice, so I know firsthand experiences. So and you're in isolation, you're not in the with your family, and they're not attending to you. Assuming if you're in that sort of situation, and then even the nurses can't be next to you because they have to protect themselves. So they filled this up and kept this on their hands so that the patients could hold to somebody's hand. It feels warm and nice. So warmth, touch, hug and a kiss, and being held and being loved, and it's important, and we need that. Right? As human beings.
A most simple example for this would be you sleeping at night. And supposingly there's no one sleeping next to you. You might grab a pillow or something to fill up the space.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have the habit of doing that.
Absolutely.
Even during summer days, I like to get myself covered with a blanket, even though it's killing me inside.
Okay. No, I think it's very critical. That takes you to one important point. I've noticed this in children, that when they leave home, right, whenever they're moving out, like even if they're going from point A to point B, they got to grab a soft toy, hold on to it, and that's a piece of home. That's a piece of them. It's so critical. Like even objects. That also takes me to it reminds me of Castaway, the movie, where Tom Hanks is shipwrecked, and he's lost in this space for many years, so, and he's all alone, and his best friend is Wilson, the ball. He talks to him, and when he loses him, the emotions that he goes through as a Wilson is a real person, though, and the conflict that he has with himself, that he recognizes that Wilson is a ball, that I'm talking to a ball, that I'm going losing my mind. And so it's so important that you have somebody to talk to, somebody who listens to you, even if they don't come up and change your life. They don't give you great suggestions. They're just there with you. So it's so important. I think it's beautiful that you mentioned that the pillow, and it also goes into the soft toys. It also goes into, so it sort of permeates all across you, right? And of course, when kids are hurt, the first thing that they do is come running to you, for that assurance. So it also has a huge impact on your attachment. So I think that also has a key role to play in terms of parenting, as a role to play. Daniel, you were mentioning about there are some internal and external factors which actually lead to loneliness, right? So can you discuss about that?
Yeah. To begin with, loneliness can be coming from your emotional needs, your physical needs, or it can be even imposed on you by the society, by the social norms. So, talking about the internal factors, there can be few, such as having low self-esteem, doing negative self-talk, low self-worth, then pushing yourself towards isolation, so which can come from social anxiety.
Okay, all interconnected. Okay.
Yeah. And these were few internal factors. Obviously, there are many others, but
what are some of the external factors then?
Yeah, external factors can be again social isolation. Then, if someone's bullying you or abusing you, you'll naturally try to get out of that situation. Then there's discrimination, sexism, racism. Then supposingly, if you're moving towards to a new area or to a new country, you're a student who is going to USA or Canada, it can be difficult for you.
So, okay, so these are some of the factors. I think broadly it's very contextual, it's very situational, and it's also very personal, right? But it's important to understand that. So if you do have any in your personal growth journey, if you are undergoing a period of self-doubt, low self-esteem, you lack confidence, you have insecurities, and you're not able to adapt to a situation, and you're struggling with it, so you should be aware that so you're already building these building blocks are already available around you to build that little wall. You're going to live within that. It's going to lead to social anxiety. I think it's all interconnected. It's difficult to say whether loneliness comes first and these come, or whether these come first. It's important to understand that the interconnectedness, right? It's difficult to say whether loneliness comes first and then it triggers all the other elements, or whether the other elements in you ends up triggering loneliness, and they're connected with each other. And another thing is also by choice, like that solitude element, so should not be mixed up with loneliness, but it can sort of when you're assuming you have a very active social life, you're clubbing and hanging out, and then you reach a burnout point, both in your career and personal life, whether a relationship fails or something happens, something goes wrong, and you want to take time off, a month off to heal, and you want to disconnect from all the toxic, everything that you think is toxic in your life, including people and places and social media. You log off everything, you wipe the slate clean, you come out of Insta, you come out of Facebook, etc. You really want a huge change, that period and situational loneliness is like, it's very critical to acknowledge that. because sometimes that's by choice, and sometimes you're like sort of forced into that. So at the end of the day, it is that little voice, that little identity, that little soul looking for acceptance, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to love, right? So love and acceptance and that importance of having that in your life, even one person will do. So you don't really need to have a very large circle. Though 3 4 people, or a circle of people is good, because what if you end up fighting with the one who really, you're depending on, or if they end up, ditching you for whatever reason. So, internal factors, if we can work on them, if it is within your capacity, again, there's one very important input here, is that not every insight is going to be useful in life. Assuming if I have a great insight saying that this is one of my main triggers, so, but if the internal trigger is so strong that is overpowering me, right? So that's the game. You get it? So it is so overpowering that I can't do something about it, and I actually need external help. All right, you get it? I need therapy or intervention or any other assistance. So that's what I need to seek to solve it. So many a times the demons inside that you deal with, so are not so apparently visible to you until you actually get into a moment of solitude to focus on, and also to realize, like, see, some people end up wasting their lives not realizing their journey, right? Loneliness and lonely people need acceptance. Loneliness is a real problem. Loneliness is a mental health issue, right? Uh, if it is not by choice, which is solitude, right? It is a mental health issue, and it is a lifestyle issue, and it is an epidemic in itself, and it is a root cause of depression, anxiety, mental health issues, hallucination, like a lot of things start coming in, right? There is no single solution.
Yeah.
There is no single solution, because you cannot say, the governmental structures and policy structures have to come in place in order to take care of that, but that's not the only solution. That's got to be there, right? Another thing is that societal structure have got to change. They've got to acknowledge this. That's got to be there, but that in itself is not the solution as well. Individuals have to, step up, and capable individuals will have to deal with and step up their game, and actually, connect with people who are lonely and help them come out, and to deal with their loneliness, right? So there are meetup groups, there are self-help groups, but I random see anybody stepping into this zone. It's mostly the people you come across, and the things that you come across are about, if something is beneficial to me, then I do it. Volunteering is not like, you get it, though it's a big blessing. If you volunteer, it's going to change an entire dimension about you. So let's understand that journey. So you're a teenager, you're trying to establish yourself, or you're a young person, who has just come out of college, you're trying to establish yourself. Loneliness is going to touch everybody's life, no matter who you are. There is loneliness in marriage. There is loneliness in love. There's emotional loneliness. If the other person doesn't connect with you, you're lonely, right? If the other person grows apart from you, because change is constant, right? You are not going to be with the person who you fell in love with, and the person is not going to be the same, and you're not going to be the same, and it is so difficult to accept that. People would deny the whole world around it, right? They'll say, I've not changed, I'm the same person that I was 15 years ago. Untrue.
Yeah.
Right? So, and maybe you will not like the person who is currently with you, who you fell in love with 15 years ago, because a newer version of themselves, and they are renewing themselves in the ways that they need to renew themselves, right? And it is their journey, it's their personal journey, right? So if you say, like, whenever you talk to lonely people, single people, they're looking for love, right? So you can understand that loneliness is a trigger for love. But is love the solution? love could be a solution and a cause as well, right? And a problem as well, right? So if loneliness led you to love, assuming you were really lonely, I've been through those phases. I'm sure everybody has been through those phases. Let me recall a conversation with my friend. So this friend of mine, and we were sitting and having a cup of coffee and having chat, and she said, I usually I'm not this vulnerable with people, but today I feel like opening up and talking. Don't judge me. I said, okay. Yeah. She said, whenever I'm in the mall, right, and I see all these couples holding hands, or with their holding hands and together, or with their babies in the stroller, and it's this beautiful family thing, and they're pushing them and moving around, my heart just breaks because I'm so desperately lonely. So I really, really felt bad. Okay. And she, at that phase in her life, was actually divorced. She was a single mother. So when you're living within this framework and you see people of your own age, of your own standing, your own classmates, all pairing up, settling down, getting married, and then you're like sort of the odd one out, then you're like, oh my God, what's happening to me? Am I going to die single? Am I going to be like lonely all the time? So that actually takes us to one of our topics that we dealt with earlier, which is self-pity. It's natural you would go there. You would visit that zone, right? So you're going to feel sorry for yourself, because you're lonely. And then you add romantic, rom-com movies to this. Rom-coms are good, but then, the heavy romantic ones. You add stories to this, books to this, the whole, film stars and their families to this, and their happy marriages to this, and all the feed on Instagram to this, and all the marriage season to this. You just one toxic mess of visuals and videos and noise and text and all of that thing telling you, hey, you're miserable, you're lonely, right? And that's where the bar is set, right? So unfortunately, there's not, though all these people are opinionating, rather not in a wrong way, if 81% people who are polled feel that they prefer to be single, that's a trend that's catching up. The total number, in another report which I read is divorced, separated, single, etc. It's about 73 million in India. It's like a pretty large number, right? So I'm sure all of them are dealing with, so the necessity to be acknowledged, to be spoken to be held and loved, to be cared for, to be wished on a birthday. Do you know when you're lonely, even if you get a damn text message saying happy birthday, that's like means the world to you, right? Whereas if nobody wishes you, you're like, come on, dude, I've done so much for you guys. I don't have a single friend who's coming and wishing me on my birthday. So another thing is those important occasions which is going to hit you, right? So when she narrated this story, I could connect with her, I could empathize with her. I think empathy is a game here, So the thing is, apathy, etc. Say, like societal structure, the communication, and the whole theme that's going on currently is more hatred, right? Everywhere, it's more partisan, more right wing, left wing, this and that, and like a whole lot of themes that are going on, not recognizing, one of my friends, yeah.
Do you not think that it usually revolves around people being self-centered?
Yeah. You have a very important point there. People are inherently. I was having this real deep conversation yesterday for about 1.5 hours. Even parents are selfish, right? Right. So selfishness it's an inborn thing. It's there, Now generosity, you get it, is rarity.
Yeah.
Generosity is rare. Okay. Now what's being understood in social media as being generous is actually incorrect. And if you're actually going out and giving out money and giving out goodies, because you're doing that for likes, right? That's a different deal. So I'm talking about real, true generosity. True generosity in friendship, true generosity in love, true generosity in parenting, true generosity in sibling. You get it? So, what are you being fed? You're being fed, be competitive, be better than your sibling, be better than your cousin, be better than your dad and mom, because that's what they tell you. Like, you got to go, you got to reach much higher heights than I've done, and you got to fulfill what I have not been able to accomplish. The whole brown thing, right? That's a noise, right? That's a noise that you're fed on. And then you watch an ad, and the ad tells you, unless you wear my brand and, like, look that cool, you're not good enough. Now, if we give a visual, even if you're driving, what's one of your favorite? Maybe a Range Rover, okay? Even if you're driving a Range Rover, wearing, whichever big brand it is, Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci and Prada, whatever it is, right? You could still be damn empty inside. You could still be lonely. You could still be heading to the best club, okay, in Dubai, standing and sipping your drink, all alone, trying to chat up people. Some would judge you in a different way, So, loneliness is real at every point, at every social strata, at every relationship point. One area that I want to focus on is the ones who are in it have to first, the ones who are in relationship, the ones who have families, the ones who have parents, and the ones who have siblings. I think they've got to wake up first. Right? Yeah. They've got to acknowledge what the other person is bringing to the table. They've got to acknowledge that if the other person is, if your spouse or your partner or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or if your child or your brother or your sibling or your sister, if they are in a lonely space and you're not doing much about them, forget about the world. You could be the damn most generous person according to social media. There might be volumes written about you. There could be books published about you, but you just absolute.
Yeah. What I see a solution in this is the person, the person you are fighting with, or supposedly, as you said, that in a relationship, if I'm having a fight with my boyfriend and I'm feeling lonely, then my boyfriend or maybe myself should shed the masquerade and accept the genuineness.
Agree.
What you are feeling, and
Agreed. What you say is very true. It's about, so reconciliation comes on top, right? I have seen families fight all their lives and reconcile in the deathbed. I witnessed that up close, right? What's the point of reconciling on the deathbed, right? Because probably you accelerated the death and it arrived early because of all the resentment, all the anger, all the sadness, So, one of the things that came out of the survey in Mumbai as well is that people who had chronic illnesses felt more lonely than the ones with no chronic illnesses. And it's natural, right? You're on the pill, you have this deadline which is sort of going in because you're deteriorating at a faster pace than the ones who don't have a chronic illness, and you have to fight more than the ones who are healthy, right? And then when you're loaded with responsibility, you're going to feel more lonely. So that's what I meant by when I said situational, right? Yeah. So what you said is true. You got to drop the masks, right? The charade, the persona that has been built. To become more authentic, to become more genuine, it's important to cultivate the better qualities, right? Rather than being very external focused. So the wants are a problem. It's important to recognize that. So if you've reached, a couple of $1 million, you want the next $10 million, you want this, you want that, you want that. You just want. If you bought one home, you want the, farmhouse, you want the next house, you want the investment house, you want the holiday home. If you got one car, you got to buy the second car, the third car. You got to have, maybe a coupe, maybe this, maybe the car you always dreamt of. And, The same thing applies. It's just multiplication, multiplication, because that's what you've been taught. Right? Even when you go to management school, what's being generally taught is that, yeah, you've got to think big, grow rich, become really large. Nobody talks about there is some focus, but that's not the entire focus on the internal growth, on the internal journey, right? So nowhere have I heard any conversations about reconciliation, importance of reconciliation. If you're not talking to your sibling, if you're not talking to your parents, if you're not talking to your spouse, if you're not talking to your own children, I think it's important to cross that bridge first.
Yeah, true.
Right? Many times that element of your life can be used as a bridge for good work as well. So many of the coaches that I've met, many of the mental health workers also that I've interacted with, have their own personal difficult journeys, which they have actually made it into their purpose. They flip that pain into their purpose. So when you flip that pain into your purpose and actually, try and reach out and do more good, that's going to come back to you fold as goodness to you, right? And that's very critical, right? Some of our journey that we're trying to do here also is to throw light on these elements and to bring that into conversation. You're free to write to us. So in order to bring in these stories, to bring in this conversation, to bring in these elements of awareness, and in a way, help people process their stuff and their, and probably alleviate the pain a little bit, reduce the pain, to help them deal with their lives, So one, if the loneliness is overpowering, you need help, right? If the loneliness is not overpowering, if it is more like a habitual, situational sort of a thing, then basic elements help, like meditation, exercise, better diet, getting out, getting some vitamin D, sunlight. It's a big blessing. There are days that I've been depressed, and I'm like going down the rabbit hole. And I've actually been able to push myself and come out and get some sunlight. It's really done wonders.
Yeah, true.
You know? So
I've experienced that.
You've experienced that, right?
I used to sit outside my house on a chair, fully, sweated and
getting the sun. It is so healing, it is so true, because we are just the refined version of animals. We need oxytocin. We need oxytocin. Actually, one area of abuse of oxytocin is also people binge eat. It's important to bring that into this conversation, because loneliness actually leads you to eat more, because you're desperate for this neurotransmitter. And you might be connecting with 100 people online, but so long as the physical touch, proximity, the warmth, and all that you want is you're not getting it. Food is also one element which actually does promote, the process of eating, promote oxytocin, so that can be a ground for abuse. So this actually sort of connects me to the growing up stories that parents don't apologize, parents don't communicate, they just put a set of rules, and the only way that they want to try to reach across to you is to give you a plate of hot food. You get so that sort of is logical to tell you, hey, here is your plate of oxytocin, stuff it in your system. Get on with it, so that's a sad way to put it, in the sense that's the brown life, so that's a setting that we've grown up with and we're living through. And I hope that it changes. I hope the conversations change. I hope the conversations are more open. I can't stress the importance of communication more heavier in this discussion than in any other conversation, any other podcast, is because with the 80th organ that has come into our lives, which is our phone, everything has become a text message. Or you lost someone, even if you lost your mom, you just get a send, hey, condolences, take care, on WhatsApp. So happy birthday, or whatever it is, Mother's Day, Father's Day, this day, that day, and then that's it. And then the clock takes, another 6 months gone, another 1 year gone, then another text message. The rest you want to know about what's happening in my life, come to my Facebook or check out my Instagram profile, etc. When I actually text people saying that, hey, I haven't seen your kids for a long time, send me a couple of snaps. Like you get it, like, and these are childhood friends, right? I know they have kids, I've got kids, and like I share my family pics with them. I do this specifically to hold a conversation, and mostly, like, dude, I'm updating on Facebook. Like, okay, I haven't logged into that damn thing for many years, so I'm not there. Can you share? But you don't get a response back, like, because people are busy with their lives, right? So social media, the whole basis of building that is to increase access, increase communication, increase networking, increase interaction, is actually reduce all of that, because it has reduced that to non-emotional, forget the emojis, okay, non-emotional, simple text messages, which is copy pasted, like, so, because you're using the predictor, right? Text predictor, right? Now that's what you're using. So the thing is, yeah, and let's say, hey, sorry to hear about that. Condolences will pop up. You're gonna put a couple of images, push the message, you're done and dusted. You've not even acknowledged that emotion, right? You're not even going to participate. You're not going to go and physically meet the person. You're not going to condole the death. You're not going to, and so many times, even if you end up there, you're going to be busy on the phone still. So I think that's a huge disruptor.
Yeah.
Nothing can ever take away getting together, switching off, and actually bonding. The power of that. Nothing is gonna, is gonna replace that. No matter, like all these companies which actually zoomed during COVID. So COVID actually sort of pushed everybody online, right? To, whether it is Zoom, whether it is, there are a few bunch of companies which actually benefited from that. The bottom line of that is that, yeah, there is a need for people to connect, so they connected online, right? But that cannot in any way replace physical connections, physical get-togethers, sitting together, sharing a meal, sharing a story, having a shoulder to cry on, like being acknowledged, being your life being witnessed. That actually takes us into this area that you will, one of the strategies to cope is you will have to build, first of all, acknowledge the weaknesses that you have. Okay, so in case if you have low self-esteem, low confidence, insecurities, you got to work on them.
Yeah.
There are several programs out there, there are several coaches out there, several therapists out there. So that's something that's got to be worked on. So because one connects to the other. So if you have these issues, you're going to have social, phobias. You're going to self-isolate, and you're going to isolate yourself, and then you're going to fall into this. Then you're going to feel like, oh, I don't have friends. I'm the odd one out. So I think the world is filled with more odd ones out rather than the cream. You get it? So and as in that in the Hangover movie, the character popularly says, and I consider myself one man in a wolf pack. So the thing is, one is self improvement, personal growth. The other is seeking help, acknowledging that you need help and seeking help, getting over that ego, dropping that thing, and looking for reconciliation. So if it is the immediate thing that you can access is a family member, or a sibling, or anything within that closer vicinity that you can access, instead of longer shot, which is actually going and talking to a stranger and then creating a relationship there or a friendship there, right? And this also gets more complicated as you grow older. When you're younger, you're more open, and the person you're talking to is also more open for conversations. Later on, the judgment gets in. So here, if it is a family member that you have not spoken to for a while, it's better to give a call. Yeah, get the conversation going, get that through, instead of actually loneliness. You're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna hurt yourself physically. You're gonna hurt yourself mentally, emotionally, and it breaks you, right? It isolates you, it breaks you. More people, get more complications because of isolation, because of loneliness, rather than people who get good support. They're able to recover faster from any setback that they have in life, whether it is health or otherwise, right? So the next thing is also, this is a personal one. I've seen people with habits, like, or hobbies, just connected to your personal habits. People with hobbies are able to survive better in these moments of loneliness than people with no hobbies. So if your hobby is just Netflix and chill, if that's what you're going to do. I'm talking more about constructive hobbies, like either playing music or whatever that you do, collecting coins, or there's somebody who loves cooking, somebody who loves gardening. My God, that's really therapeutic. Like, so, because the blessing is you got to really have blessed hands in order for you to plant and for something to grow out of the soil, right? And for you to create something, right? You get it? So you can try writing.
Yeah.
That's very therapeutic as well. So it's huge. Venturing out, somehow pushing yourself out of that four walls, coming and getting some sunlight, and trying to get into situations where there are people who you can interact with somehow, even if it is a small interaction. And the younger ones, for them to acknowledge that there are older people whose children have grown up and gone, right, gone on to lead their lives, and these guys are isolated and they're single and they're lonely. In order for them to chat up with these people, right, to talk to them, right, or to help them, or to assist them, or to support them in any which way that they can, instead of avoiding them and isolating them all the more. So the sad part is when it's an old couple and one of them dies, it's like really sad. You get it? So then they become all the more lonely. So, and if there is a social stigma that all the young ones want to be, want to be hanging out, on Instagram or on Facebook or on the mall or doing their own stuff with their own gang, and nobody gives a damn about them, then it's going to be all the more hurtful, right? So the earlier family concepts, cultural, there are a lot of cultural, subcultural elements, societal elements that also comes in. That has also had an impact on all of these, so it sort of impacted. And if you are, there is no stopgap solution for if you're lonely in love or if you're lonely in a marriage, and that's a big one. There's no easy way to solve it, right? So if there are ways in which, because that needs a lot of work, that needs a lot of therapy, there's a lot first acknowledging the situation, and also to work towards that reconciliation. So one bottom line idea in this entire conversation is that you got to hold on to what you have, right, and not have that inflated sense of ego, saying that I will not apologize, I'm better than. So that conceptual framework, that what children use, that forgive and forget quicker. So they're able to do that so quick, right? They snap at you and you've done something wrong and they're angry. They're screaming and yelling, and the screaming and yelling is done in the next 10 minutes, and they're in a different world. They're already playing and they want you to play with them, and then they connect with you. And then so then it goes. Whereas family fights are generational fights, right? They don't talk for like 30 years, they don't talk for like 40 years. It sort of creates a whole lot of mess in there. So and also take these whatever little measures that can be done in order to come out of that situational loneliness that you got, and to become internally stronger. Now, one point I want to make clear here is that there is a whole lot of focus on individual and the individual's growth and individual's progress. Don't get carried away by that conversation, by that piece of writing, by that self-help and that entire theme of it. You need the society, you need a family, you need these are essential elements, and that's the way you were born, and that's the way you're going to go. So it's important to acknowledge that, and important to try and find a way of building that in whatever form or shape that comes up in. It may not be with perfect people, but it's important that you build it up. So, some final thoughts, So, one, if you are going through, insecurities, lack of confidence, low self-esteem, etc. There's one tool which I found very helpful. This is again from Phil and Barry's work. The bottom line idea is this, okay? It is all of us have a shadow self, okay? So all of us have a shadow self, and that self emerges usually in moments of insecurity. So you have to just sit down, close your eyes, and recall a moment when you were miserable and insecure. The examples used are usually, when you have to address an audience, like a public speaking kind of
Yeah.
a situation. You're going to address an audience, and you're nervous, you're flustered, you're like, etc. Applying that principle here, that image that you get when you add all these negative connotations that you have about yourself. So one simple question to ask is, what is a part of me which I know, right, which I'm scared of, which I don't want others to see? What's a part of me I don't want others to see, which I'm scared and worried about? And start writing that down, right? And if you say that, okay, it's this, like they lack confidence, or they lack this, or they lack that, or they lack that, then when all those emotions, when you write down, you got to build an image. When you build that image, it's usually a shadow version of yourself, which is not a very flattering version of yourself. So it could be when you were a teenager, it could be when you were, when you were smaller, when you were, isolated, bullied, when you were lonely, when you were feeling depressed and down, basically broken. Now, yeah, so now that is a shadow of you, and that shadow is constantly with you. And all of us are that you're talking about the masquerade, the charade that is put on, the mask that we put on. This is the mask that is the other thing that we are projecting as us. Is the mask that we are covering that. It's not to protect that being, brought out in the open. That's what people talk about being vulnerable, right? When you actually open up, then you feel like people are going to judge you, they're going to dislike you, they're going to, call you names, they're going to troll you, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, right? So, the exercise there is to acknowledge and to embrace that shadow self. And you have to visualize in a way that shadow self is into you, that you have become one, and then you are able to instruct, listen to me, to the crowd, right?
Okay.
That is called inner authority. Okay. Inner authority, children have it inbuilt in them. That's amazing. Because you know why? They don't care whether they are big or small, they're little people, right? Uh, Beautiful little people. So they just go about their self expression, they tell their stories, they do the narratives, they play roles. They do all of that because they have the inner authority, right? As you grow up with restrictions, with of course life experiences, with lack of love, with parenting, with all the controls that comes in. Don't express, don't do this, don't dress like that, don't sit like that, don't do this, don't. You already are getting modulated into something else with lesser expression, especially for people like me in the phase that we are in. The lesser we express, the better it is for the situation, because they just don't want your opinion, right? And your opinion always causes distress to someone or the other, right? Especially in family, marriage situations, etc. So the inner authority, you end up losing it. The inner authority is connected to your self-expression. So when you embrace it, when you embrace your shadow self, and so basically, if you look at that as elements, this is you, this is your shadow self looking at you, and what you're trying to guard against, which is actually making you nervous, saying that, hey, you're going to fail like how you failed when you were 14. You're going to be miserable, tongue is going to be tied, you're not going to be able to present, you're going to make an ass of yourself, you get it? It's going to be a whole mess, And then that nervousness is what you're going to project onto the audience, and you're going to be really going to go through those emotions. So the bottom line idea there is to embrace the shadow self and to emerge stronger using that shadow self as a conduit to your better energy of self expression. Right? That I am just like that two parts, right? Male and female, yin and yang, all those energies. So, as I said earlier in one of the conversations, I'm both the observer and the experiencer, right? And once I acknowledge this and I use that as a power for me to propel my self expression, I think then you should be able to break that mold.
Yeah.
Right? So we can do an exercise once on this, so break that mold, come out of it, get over that shyness, send that message, if it is a message that you're going to connect with someone, give that call if you're going to, if it is a call that's going to connect you with someone, or, write a letter if you're old school, like many people still write and they prefer writing, and, or get up and move and, go and meet, connect with that other person that you're going to connect with and that you've been looking forward to connecting with, or with a stranger, if you're just trying to make a friend, if you're trying to just get over that loneliness. I think it's essential that we do all that is in our capacity to do, right? So as they say, popularly when we guys were in college, we used to say, oh, you want to find a religious one, go to church. You want to find a, like, you want to find the hep ones and hang out in the clubs, and so naturally places are there where there are going to be people, right? And and then you're going to be able to connect. You're going to be out in the open. You got to put yourself and out in the open and make yourself vulnerable. And I think you'll be able to be vulnerable is only when you embrace this part of you. And usually the approach is the other way around. People are, they, in safe spaces, they open up, they become more vulnerable, they acknowledge the other side of them, and then they try and embrace that and come in. Here, if you voluntarily sit down and do it, I think it's going to be very empowering. You get it? It'll help you break through. You can use that as a conduit, just like how we spoke about. How can you flip loneliness around as a strength? How you can use setback and childhood trauma around as a strength for other people's healing, to make that into your purpose, to make that into your purpose and your passion, and then convert that into a better model for life. So with that we conclude. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next time.